really know how to approach local politics, and even had skepticisms about, say, voting integrity, that made them unwillingly to even have the faith to engage. And I think he was spot on when he said that he is not going to. He's obviously going to try to look into voter integrity and support voter integrity laws, but he was not going to perpetuate the notion that our voice was cast out or meaningless in this last election, because that's exactly what the opponents of the political agenda that we share would want us to think. They would want us to be demoralized and feel like there's no point in us voting. And he pointed out that Trump was going to Arizona and saying they stole the election and this, that, and the other, leading up to the Senate and House elections that took place after the presidential election. And it played a major role in dissuading Republican voters from showing up and engaging, which lost them the Senate. And look at the consequences that has brought us.
Yeah.
So it is interesting.
Yeah, I don't like. It was about 4 days before the election when he changed his tune, and a lot of conservative commentators were telling him, "Stop saying that their vote doesn't matter. Stop going to huge rallies and telling a bunch of conservatives that their vote doesn't matter. It's already been stolen. It's already been rigged." Do you think people are going to vote in an election like that? No, they're not. Now, what's really important though to realize is that on the local side of things, what you end up seeing, especially on local level politics, is so little organization that it ends up being the case that you have Republicans hurting other Republicans in the election, weakening them, because the Democratic Party on the local level is so adept at laser focusing on singular goals and making sure that only the people they want to run are running, that they are, their Democratic candidate is all by themselves, and the Republican candidate is splitting the party up. It's causing problems. Ron was telling us that one of the big problems they had in the 2020 election was in the lead up. Because there was so little actual participation from the communities, the caucuses were all messed up. The assemblies were all messed up. You ended up, you would have multiple candidates that at no point they're running for the same position, local county commissioner kind of deal. And they're both basically running as establishment level candidates, except they end up splitting up the local Republican Party behind either one of them, that whoever loses, all of their support leaves the party. And so now all of a sudden you've got half the party participants remaining completely they cannot compete with what the Democratic Party does as far as local side of things, and just losing half your party after the primary. And then when you lose the election itself, those people don't want to participate anymore. So the Republican Party's inability to get focused on the local level and start ignoring the national level has really cost a lot of these communities. Casey, have you noticed a lot of issues on your local level with Democrats trying to move in Utah?
Well, big time. I've said this many times. Like here in Utah, because we were a small town state for a long time, up until we had the Olympics. As soon as we had the Olympics, everybody's like, "I love your mountains and I love this," and everybody started flooding here. And now you go down to downtown Salt Lake City or anywhere in the major cities, you have it predominantly being Democrat. And that's the worst part I have. And this year Utah is doing a redistrict again because of population growth. So we're going to redistrict all the cities and counties and everything just for voting to try to help fix that. And it's kind of sad because there's a lot of opposition. And it's like, why? Like, it makes sense. This is a logical move. However, from the Democrat side, they're thinking that you're going to cause gerrymandering. And it's like, guys, stop throwing out these words and stop blaming everything, and let's just come to a compromise. Just because we don't agree on exactly everything doesn't mean you have to oppose everything. And that's what I'm seeing. And that's why I'm seeing, like, I was in the comments just a little bit before, and I was like, I need to jump in on this conversation. But that's why I believe the Libertarian Party is growing, is the conservatarians and libertarians can actually be like, yeah, we can work with you on that, or budge, right? We can negotiate and figure out a good medium ground or a middle ground. But you don't see that from the right. You do not see that from the left at all. No. They just dig their heels in and they're like, nope, my way or the highway. What up, Jelani?
Exactly. So what I want to tell the people that are tuning in and everything, the reason why we're talking about this today is because things have gotten really hectic in our country, especially when we're talking about how divided politics has gotten and how divided, on a national level our country has become. However, through all of this, the one thing that COVID has taught the federal government especially, is that that your local city is truly the most powerful government entity in your life on a day-to-day basis. Your local police force is basically is going to be the arm of the government in your state. And so they have the power on the local level to choose to enforce or not enforce laws that the federal government puts out. They are the final roadblock, to attempts to trample on your constitutional right. And if you look at local level politics across the country, you will notice a trend over the last 50 years of the Democratic Party swooping into local cities, taking over their city councils, taking over their school boards, taking over their executive branch of the local government. At that point, it doesn't matter who's in charge at the federal government level. It almost doesn't even matter who's in charge at the state level. The city has so much control in your day-to-day life that having Democrats control every level of it can be incredibly detrimental to your lives, because that is where the power truly is. An individual city can grant you or take away your Second Amendment rights. An individual city can grant you or take away your First Amendment rights at any given time. So what we're doing today is really just discussing the importance of local politics, the trends we've seen, and what we can do to actually address these issues and begin to actually make tangible changes in our communities.
Nice. Let me reinforce that real quick. Let me reinforce that with what we just went real quick, Bucky. Sorry. So a few weeks ago is when school started here in Utah. And so our county mayor and city mayor, our county mayor tried to enforce mask mandates across Salt Lake County, which involved my city and a whole bunch of more right-leaning cities. But last year, because of what our governor did, so our governor extended an executive order for a second time, which is against the law here in Utah. And so our legislature was like, nope, not doing that. You have to go through us. And our legislature passed a law that said, hey, your city council will have to approve a mask mandate if it comes from the county level. If it comes from the city level, it can be negotiated. But at the county level, you can't enforce all of the cities under you to do that. And so our county mayor, Jenny Wilson, signed a stupid bill to try to force masks. And then our city council, county council, came in and was like, nope. And they came back and reversed the decision and said, you do not have the power to do that. You do have the power to do that, but we disagree with the decision. And that tells you the power of your local governments versus federal. And that is done.
What's interesting is what was really interesting to me is how some of these small boards and committees that you've never heard of have such tremendous power over your city council and your school board, because it turns out that your city council members don't know anything. So when they're wondering what to do about housing, they turn to the local board of housing, and the local board of housing comes in and gives the city council a presentation and basically tells them how they should address these issues. And it's so easy for you to actually get on these little boards, like the Larimer County Women's Board and all these other little boards that you've never heard of that actually go in and make these presentations and have way more pull than you think. And, again, Ron showed us how people not showing up to the assembly to vote, except for people who are activists for the candidates, who didn't come there to have a fair discussion on the merits of the candidate.
Their family members,
They ended up splitting the vote, and what happened is, because the vote was split, you had all these different people on the ballot, and then it was really easy for one Democrat to win when the vote was split between one Democrat and two Republicans and a Libertarian, because the so-called right-wing vote was split up against all these other candidates because the assembly didn't do their job of vetting, because people didn't show up, only activists for their candidate showed up.
And there's another level to this as well. There a lot of counties have moved over, and a lot of cities have moved over to a quote-unquote nonpartisan local election, wherein they remove all D's and all R's from the ballot. You don't know who you're voting for. Now, it's supposed to be on your local party to be able to provide you with the information, like, hey, you're in this precinct, this is who your representatives, who your options are, and this is who you should probably vote for based on your party. But a lot of the Republican Party at the local level is none of this. There is absolutely no infrastructure in place. A lot of the precinct and district captain roles are completely empty. Mine is currently, so I'm applying for that here in Fort Collins. And what it really allows you to do is, so there is the structure. Basically, the blueprint for the structure is in place on how to do this very effectively. You can basically break it down. So each neighborhood has basically two representatives that can find out all the grievances of the people there, report it to a local district captain, and get it up to your local Republican Party really quick, right? But
if you don't show up, then the district captain gets to appoint someone of their choosing. And if they don't represent your neighborhood.
And it's very easy for Democrats to infiltrate these Republican roles. So it ends up creating a problem where people aren't participating enough in their local party politics. They're either not donating money to help them out. Because here's the thing is, you can donate all you want to the national level GOP. None of that money is going to filter down into your local county. Your local county needs you to donate directly, and your local county is the one that's going to be serving you best. The national level GOP, if you're donating to them, take that money, pull it out of there, and find your local Republican Party office, because those people are going to be, when you get down to the city level, chances are whoever's in charge of your local Republican Party, if you're a Republican in that area, their ideas line up better with yours, right? If you're in an area where being Republican means you lean more conservative, religiously conservative, and you have a more religious community, their chances are your actual county rep is going to be a lot like that. Or if you're the type of Republican that is more libertarian leaning, and that's generally what your area is like, your local Republican Party is going to be more reflective of that as well. So just realize,
One of the things I've always said, Casey's probably heard me say it a million times, is if somebody doesn't own a business in your city or live within those limits, you need to be hounding them. You can't trust them. You can't look at them and say, man, they know what's going on. If they don't live inside of your city boundaries or inside of your county and have a natural pulse on the people they're representing, you need to be seriously questioning an individual's motives. You need to be looking at their finances. You need to be looking at their past, and vetting them is such an important piece of this. And this is a, I don't even think this falls under a political party agenda. This should be like everybody's number one priority. It doesn't matter who the candidate is. If they don't jive with your lifestyle and the predominant majority of the people who live near you's lifestyles, you will never find a local government that can support you in a way that is ideal. It will always be a fight back and forth. They will always pull power moves. And to the point I think that you guys have painted pretty well, their ground game is just strictly better, and they have a better unified force right now.
And I have a theory as to why I think the left is inherently advantaged when it comes to, grassroots activism and things like that. It's because they genuinely believe in collective action. They believe in using the government as a tool to see their version of society realized. Whereas the libertarians I know, most of them just want to go to work, come home, and be left alone. They are trying everything they can possibly do to just stay away from it, where the left-wingers I know, they pride themselves on being activists, on collectivizing everything they possibly can. And so I think just, you know, as a personality type and as a manifestation of that worldview, they're more likely to be engaged in activism than so-called right-wingers or people who don't believe in utilizing the government. But we really do need Ron Swansons in positions to hold these people accountable and to make good decisions. And when I say hold these people accountable, I mean most people aren't paying attention to what's going on during the city council meetings. Did you know that your city council meets every other Tuesday of the month? And you can actually go there and see what they're talking about and voice your opinion. Most people don't show up. Kevin recently went to one and he told some great stories. And it sounds like people on the right, if you will, are beginning to take far more initiative. And ever since this critical race theory thing came to fruition, you've seen a ton of people getting engaged in the schools, and that's great. But you know, did you guys see that that story that came from Project Veritas where they had the Antifa teacher who was literally quoted
absolute communist
Can I just insert?
Right, he literally said he had 180 days
personal reference on this.
to turn students into revolutionaries.
I grew up like in the suburbs of Sacramento. Like this does not surprise me at all.
No,
like this is absolutely educated white liberal.
Aren't they both from California?
I know the one that just lost his job, it was from Sacramento. And I grew
so
up
one was a
suburb.
communist, and the pride flag lady was also in California, wasn't she?
Probably. I mean, it would certainly not surprise me.
You don't have much to talk about.
But listen, real quick.
I just paint that picture to help people.
Project Veritas was able to find this person because somebody else working at the school basically informed Project Veritas of what was going on.
Yeah.
And that's why it's necessary that we're actually in these committees, we're in these boards, and we're engaged in it, because then you actually have eyes on what's going on.
So I think one of the incredibly important things to realize that's happening, and I'll share kind of a personal story with this. Okay, so my mom was a professor of she taught different types of debate courses and literature courses. Okay, and she taught at Sac State, and one of the things that was incredible was she also worked at the community college, and she felt a lot of pressure to join unions that she flat out just didn't want to be a part of the teachers unions. She never had. She had taught, grade school early on in her life, and at no point was she really interested in the unions. And the unions would come in and use a tactic. They would say, you're going to get sued by somebody for something you say, and you're going to need us, right? And that's kind of always how they would pitch it, is in this fear propaganda. She would never join them. And one of these interesting things happened is that they came to her and to speak to CRT. This was, a decade ago or so, maybe a little more when this was happening. But they were asking her to include race and gender studies in her courses and make them topics of either papers or debate courses. And so she ended up in any case, short story is that she worked at Sac State, and these are some of the pressures that she felt working there, and ultimately, I think ended her career, at the point she did, because she kind of needed to get there, but for years felt this incredible pressure to teach things that were way outside the bounds of her study, of her look from a professor's end of their responsibility, things that did not make sense. And now this has become the standard hive mind of all teachers from college to kindergarten.
Yeah, I think that what we need to understand about why it is that people are starting to wake up right now is that it's the paradox of the American system. We have the perfect Constitution and Bill of Rights to allow you to not give a single solitary damn about the government in the slightest, and ignore it and just live your life and enjoy doing what you do. Except the system requires that you participate in order to ensure it remains that way. So it's the paradox of it. In order for you to keep the government, keep having a government that that is small enough that it doesn't really impact your life, you have to participate in it to a level by being cognizant of your local level elections, by being cognizant of what the policies and stuff that are going on that are going to have major impacts on your life. It sucks that we can't just, forget about it, right? Hey, we have the Constitution, we have the Bill of Rights. I don't have to worry. I'm going to be protected. Except, if you look at the Supreme Court, you have people who legitimately believe in living, breathing documents. These things change over time. And if that's going to be the case, you have to be actively participating to stymie that. We have to be the roadblock to the government's expansion if we want to be able to keep having a government that isn't expanding. So it is incredibly important that we start looking forward into 2022's midterms and stuff like that. Your local cities are more than likely going to be having elections coming up soon. They try to do these at different times than the national level because they want to be able to keep focus specifically on one thing versus the other. They don't want your local politics getting lost in the scuffle of the national level. Pay attention to what is going on in your local cities. I guarantee you there is absolutely the opportunity to be taking school boards back, because what ended up happening that the left was always going to run into is that because they push so hard into the culture, eventually everybody reaches their breaking point. And we're starting to see that across the country with parents going to these school board meetings, parents realizing, hey, if I want to make sure my kids are getting a good education, I have to participate even more. I have to be the one who sits on the school board and ensures that they're actually out there providing an education and not an indoctrination. So it comes down to the fact that, unfortunately, in order for us to have that government that we don't have to care about at all, we're going to have to care about it a lot for a little while until we can get back there.
I think there's a piece of good news about it, though. It's that we've caught it before it became malignant. This is certainly in teachers' minds across the board, in my opinion. But I think we've caught it in time, and I think last year was a tremendous wake-up call, seeing parents at home with their kids, listening to teachers give lessons. And certainly in the area that I was in California, it's a relatively conservative place. And a lot of people had the same concerns. They were listening to the curriculum that was being taught and just absolutely blown away with the demonstrative view of how America was founded and when it was founded and whom by it was founded. So I just, it's one of those things. I hope there's something that we've caught before it's malignant. It's something that certainly needs to be worked out, and I'm probably gonna have to do to kind of keep the analogy running 100 courses of chemo across the country in order to cleanse this issue from us. But it is one of those things. I think I certainly have seen a detrimental effect and then consequences from it. In some of the places in California. So yeah.
For those of you who are watching, who have ever asked yourself, or said to yourself, I want to do more, I just don't know what to do. I guarantee you there are precinct captain roles open. There are district captain roles open. There are more than you can actually make tangible change in your community. And when you become a precinct captain, you have a couple blocks in your neighborhood that is your responsibility to go around and just talk to the people, find out how they're doing. It gets you involved in the community. It gets you, it gets you interacting, finding out what's going on even in your own neighborhood, allows you to fight back against maybe HOAs that are trying to ban American flags. Because, if you have an HOA that's trying to do that, it's supposed to be on your precinct captain to bring that up to bring it up to the county so that they can help you fight it, help get you in contact with lawyers to fight it. But that kind of stuff isn't possible if people aren't willing to take on the responsibility of being engaged with their communities. And, I think that if you've ever said to yourself, I want to do more, I want to help fight this democratic cancer that keeps spreading across the country, it's very easy. Just go talk to your local party and find out what's going on there. Chances are, some of them are going to be pretty incompetently run, and you can actually start making even bigger changes to make positive consequences in your community. So I just want to reiterate over and over again, this is on us. This is how we can fight back. This is how we can take our country back.
And speaking of those,
through the local level.
And speaking of those precinct directors, when we were at the Larimer County Republican office today, he showed us a stack. Literally half of the precincts in Larimer County didn't have a single person running to be the county director or the precinct director.
The precinct captain.
And so it's on him to appoint those people. If you literally just Google your local area, Libertarian office or Republican office, and show up, there's a significant shot you could immediately start fulfilling a meaningful position.
Yeah.
Or at least going and speaking with the community and promoting candidates. Like Kevin mentioned earlier, so many of these candidates, because they don't that we were supposed to have nonpartisan elections on so many of these things like city council and school board, they don't put the R or the D or the L next to somebody's name, so you can take for granted what their beliefs are when you're voting and you've never heard from them. So they really rely on ground game activists to go door to door and tell people that they should vote for this person and why.
They also have the money to do it.
Shocked at the data that these groups have to track down who is unaffiliated but sympathetic to left-leaning or right-leaning candidates. You could actually go reach out to unaffiliated people and swing elections, because that's how fighting is done. Fighting in politics, in a democratic republic where elections are won by votes, fighting needs to translate into persuading people to vote for candidates that are going to help realize your values.
And it's a lot easier on the local level too.
If we just had a few more people going out there, I mean, 50 people can completely change the election of a precinct.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to convince a Democrat to support a conservative view when you're not talking about universal health care, but in fact, you're talking about your local park, or you're talking about a local business or a new library, something like that, or a new zoning code. It's a lot easier to actually convince them to join you, because it has a real tangible effect on their life as well. And it has a real impact on the community. And that you'll notice as you get to community things, the divide between Democrat and Republican becomes very, very, very small. However, over time, it grows. If over time only Democrats are there, it's going to slowly move further left. But it's very easy to actually be successful on the local level, convincing people that normally wouldn't agree with you to side with you, because you don't actually have to bring party politics into it. You just have to use the values that make you a conservative in order to explain to them why this program, that they're supporting would have a very serious negative impact on their community. And they're a lot more likely to listen, because that's their children affected, that's their friends, their neighbors that is going to be impacted. And at the end of the day, usually when you're in an area like that, culturally, you guys are so close to each other that it's a lot easier to actually negotiate and discuss and come to solutions over a lot of these problems.
Yeah.
And the truth is that the vast majority of people that I know don't care about politics. They don't know anything about policy and its ramifications. And all it would take is for someone who's articulate and charismatic and nice to them to show up and say, by the way, we should not vote for the Hughes Stadium parking lot to be turned into open space because we have a massive shortage of housing, and that space could be better utilized if utilized to provide housing or another daycare facility to help offset rising rents and daycare costs in our community. And they would go, gosh, you know what? This political candidate actually came and asked me what I thought and asked me to support them. You know what? I think I will.
There's an old saying that I really love. On the national level, I'm a libertarian. On the state level, I'm a Republican. On the local level, I'm an independent. In my home, I'm a socialist. That's about how it goes, right? It's in my community.
I tell my 3-year-old to pay for her own health care.
It all depends on the level you're talking about. When you get to the local level, party politics are almost non-existent, because at the end of the day, that is the level that actually social programs that Democrats try to put on the national level. Some of these social programs actually work very well when it's only at a city level, like, having daycare programs. That kind of stuff at the city level is much better managed, much better run, because it's by people in the community, impacted by the community. If you're going to be, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I think one of the most interesting ways that people can get to know their neighbors is go ask them what they have what you guys have in common about how you hate the Parks and Rec department in your city. Go
Yeah.
ask your neighbor what you think about the Parks and Rec community, or go ask them what you think about the traffic commission inside your county. Go ask them questions about these types of infrastructure and city planning. Go ask them about this kind of stuff. You will find that 9 times out of 10, you're probably in agreement
Yeah.
with people in your neighborhood. Like there's very few people who want, I'll give you an example, right? I just left California. One of the things that they did nothing, the traffic commission did nothing on, is they allowed for the additional 2 lanes to be built on Highway 15 going south in this particular corridor. And they allowed them to be sold to the fast track company. So they're toll roads now, right?
Yep.
So the public paid for the roads to be built. They paid
It's happening here in Colorado too.
And now you pay the toll on top of it. And the simple fact is, if enough people had gotten involved with the traffic commission, this project would have never gone through.
Yeah.
It would have never been approved, right? So
Nope.
shows the lack of willingness, and that's just one area now, and that's not like in every area, but ask your neighbors about stuff like that and see where they fall. I think you'll find that it's very common ground.
Yep. But again, sorry, Casey, go ahead.
No, I'm you finish that thought and then let me follow it up. Let me do that.
I was going to say it comes down to, at the end of the day, the Republican Party or the your local level, they've done such a good job of convincing you that you have so much different between you and a Democrat, that they've gotten you to not realize that that's on a general level. That may be true, but if you're talking about you and the Democrat that lives next door to you, chances are you guys have a lot more in common than you think. Chances are you actually share a lot of the same kind of values. And at the end of the day, on the city level, on the local community level, you're going to be in agreement on a lot of the things you want to see. And it's historically the problem with the social program on the national level is because it is so detached from the communities it's supporting that there's not enough humanity going into it, right? Say if there's a national level daycare provider and you have to go through a national level agency to get money for daycare, you call in and get someone, they're not going to know who you are. They're not going to know where you're from. They're not going to care where you're from. They're just going to handle it as they get it. But if it's your local city and you're actually calling in, there's a chance that you might even know the person you're calling into, or they're going to know the school, or they're going to know like where, what part of town you're from, and they're going to want to help you because it's the local level. And at the end of the day, we care about our communities. Usually you care about your communities. You want your neighbors to be successful. You want the kids at your school going to school with your kids to be from good families that support similar values to you and stuff like that. And the way you do that is through cultivating the community. And you can do that very easily by just participating in your local level politics. This is right there for you to be able to start finding out, what kind of, you can start finding out, do I share values with my neighbors? One thing I noticed when I was knocking doors, I knocked almost 10,000 doors last year for a local senatorial campaign. And it would always strike me. There was one time I knocked on this lady's door and I asked her, I was just telling her I was there for Cory Gardner and everything like that. She goes, "Oh, you're here for the Republican candidate? Don't say that in my neighborhood. They're all lefties." And I looked at her, I go, do you know, like, have you ever talked to anybody that lives around you, what political affiliation they have? And she goes, "No, not really." She lived in a cul-de-sac. Every single house on this street, 27 houses, I counted. Of the 27 houses, 1 was a registered Democrat, 24 were registered Republican, and 2 were registered independent. And she had no idea because they've done such a good job at disassociating people from their communities. They've done such a good job convincing conservatives they will be ostracized if they share their values, because on a national level, if you're a conservative from Alabama and you go to LA, that might happen. But if you're a conservative in Mobile, Alabama, and you're talking to your next door neighbor who's also conservative, you're not going to get canceled.
Quick point of inquiry is, Casey, I'm curious about your point, and then there's a question here in the comments. I'd love to. I don't know if it's a general question. I don't have any idea about it, but I'd love to address it and see if anybody does. So,
my point is going to be a little bit more unification across the country. Like we talked a little bit about teachers, we talked about school boards, we talked about a bunch of this stuff where you can get engaged to take action. I know a lot of people on the Be the Change side helped out with a teacher that is here just south of me by 20, 30 minutes from my house. She went out and she just blew a gasket in her classroom, and it was just going off on telling people, if you don't like LGBT, get out. If you don't believe in climate change, get out of my classroom. If you don't this and all of this stuff, and your parents are dumber than you are, you should not listen to them, type of stuff is what she was saying in her classroom. I don't know if you guys heard that. But across it is surprising here in Utah. I
didn't hear the Utah part.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
30 minutes from my house, just south of my house.
I'll add to that, Casey, is I just went in I had a doctor's appointment to get a checkup, and I was talking with the intake nurse who does your blood pressure and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And she knew that I was coming back from California, and she mentioned the fact that even inside of their charter school, that one of the things that they found in her daughter's curriculum I think it's in first or second grade, was some CRT based curriculum. It's and shows they had to go petition to the charter school, right? So it's not just in any one place. It's not just in the public sector. So people need to be involved, as much as they can with their neighbors, their children's, the children's parents, right. Friends' parents, those kinds of things. And I think that will go a long ways. So
and what I was getting to was around that and saying the same lines is, it also doesn't even matter if you're from that area. There are ways you can actually help, because all you need to do is send emails at times, right?
Yep.
And that's what a whole bunch of people did on Be the Change and the followers, and we just bombarded them. And then with emails saying, how is she just put on leave? You have video evidence. There is no reason. And so not even within 8 hours of overwhelming amount of emails coming through, because I shared that video, she was let go. And now I'm trying to work with the Utah State School Board to figure out how we can ensure this either doesn't happen again very clearly, or she never teaches again. My goal is to never teach again, but I also need to respect people make mistakes and we can learn. Fine. But there's ways to do things and help other states at the same time. When teachers act like that, we can help each other.
So what we need to realize here too is that there is the teachers in America. We have to be on top of this, because for the last 70 years, his name is Yuri Bezmenov, right? So he was a former KGB psyops agent, and he described how you take over a culture. And part one is always education. Education is how they get into it. So for the last 60 years, there has been this cycle where liberal teachers, like a moderately liberal faculty, starts hiring more liberal teachers, which creates more liberal faculty, which creates a more liberal teachers. The teachers that are currently the young under 35 teachers in America right now were taught almost exclusively cultural Marxism, CRT, throughout their entire teaching process. It has only recently been brought to light that this has been going on for the last 40 years in academia. Okay, this is so deep rooted. We need to continue to be on top of teachers. Do not, at this point, everyone should assume that their teacher has had at least been exposed to CRT, and you need to verify that they're not spreading it in their classroom, because it is impossible to be a teacher in America today and not have been exposed to it. And the only way we can do anything about this is being involved in your local school boards, being involved in the PTA meetings, being involved in your local, get your kids involved in local clubs so you can talk to parents and find out, is your child being taught this? Is your child being taught that? Maybe there's parents that don't really know the full implications of what their child is learning, and you can start explaining to them. You're hanging out at a soccer practice, and one of the moms goes, yeah, for some reason, little Lisa over here was taught, they made her do some kind of oppression chart today at school, and I don't know why. And that's when you, as a member of the community, can go, are you serious? And you can start to actually talk to them about why this is bad and start drumming up that community support to stand against it. This is how you do grassroots activism. Grassroots activism means us as the community interacting with each other to talk about these things, find out where it's going on, and take action against it. This is the only way we will be able to do this.
So I want to read a text message that my friend Amani sent me. Now, a little bit about Amani without putting out too much of who she is. She grew up in China. She worked in Chinese media and then quit when they were forcing her to basically engage in blatant and obvious ill-intended propaganda, and gave her no freedom to talk about what she felt was important for her community. And she came to the United States and she became a translator. She worked in media, but she recently got a job, a reading tutor for K through third grade kids. And this is I'm quoting a text message she sent to me a couple days ago. 2 days ago, I had to sit through a anti-oppression and identity framework and gender identity and pronouns training for my new job, reading tutor for kindergarten through third grade kids. I learned that all white people are oppressors. After I spoke up saying I don't believe that's true, the leader told me not to share this with the group, and if you're a person who's white or white presenting, you do not have that, or you do have that white privilege. According to their characterizations, I'm a cisgender, assigned woman at birth, documented citizen, middle class, land owning, heterosexual, able-bodied, and that makes me fulfill 6 out of the 9 dominant social identities, classifying me as an oppressor, and I need to watch what I say in the classroom. This is what she was told a couple days ago. For part of her training to be a kindergarten through third grade teacher. Now I want to share another personal story. I want to talk about speaking out. We talk about being engaged, but one of the most fundamental ways that you can be engaged is to just be vocal. Like Kevin said, so many people don't realize that their next door neighbors may share their values because they're afraid to speak to their neighbors. Well, frankly, if we're afraid to speak, we are just giving an open floor to people who hate you and want you to be afraid to speak. If you're afraid to speak, you have no right to complain about anything if you're not allowed to even speak publicly about what you're concerned about. And this is something that I very much struggled with when I kind of transitioned from being very progressive to a conservatarian-minded person. I was a touring musician before I got a job doing radio and doing activism, and I was deeply involved in the local music scene, which is dominated, completely, utterly, totally controlled by the progressives. In fact, many of the music venues and the music district downtown is outright owned by Pat Stryker, who sells medical tools and is very, very progressive left. She literally bought the music venues in town and then appointed people to run them that she knew would have a left-wing bias and promote her values. And she did that because she knows how valuable the culture is. But when I first kind of transitioned into conservatarianism, I was genuinely scared to come out and say anything to anyone, and I didn't. I kept my mouth shut for probably about a year, other than the occasional Facebook post where I questioned things and I encouraged my peers to question things, and it always turned into these big, long arguments. But what I discovered when I finally got over that hump and decided to start speaking was I actually had a lot of friends who agreed with me. And it opened the door for me to start making new friends. So because I was afraid to speak because of my peer groups, I was afraid of them castigating me as a bad person for disagreeing with their agenda. I didn't realize or give the opportunity to make new friends. And so I continued living in a constant state of social anxiety because I never gave myself the opportunity to go out there and stumble upon people who did share my values. And ever since I've started becoming more vocal about it, I have started gaining people who I've realized they're actually my friends because I don't have to hide who I am around them. If you have to hide who you are around someone, can you really consider them your friend?
No.
And I still have friends that I drastically disagree with, and I have tremendous conversations with them. But now I don't feel like I'm completely isolated, and I have much more confidence in speaking out.
Yeah. Hey, well, so we've been going for almost an hour here. Again, for those of you watching, this is the weekly Liberty Revolt community chat. We do it at 8 o'clock every Friday. And so before we take off here, you're going to be seeing a lot more of Liberty Revolt content on the Be the Change page. We're doing a lot more working together, helping to prop each other up. So don't, if you like what you've seen today from the Liberty Revolt side of things, go ahead and head over to our page, give us a like, give us a follow. Just help support us so we can continue to get our voice out there. Before we take off, let's get some last comments about this from, let's start with you, Eric, really quick.
I'll just say, again, a million times over, I'll say this is you have to look at the local level. And if these people don't own businesses or live within your city limits, vet them to the umpth degree until you feel secure that they have your best interests at heart and the pulse of your community in the back of their mind when they're making decisions. So that's the best information I can kind of give for people right now tonight. And go out and use that and do what you can with it. But talk to your neighbors also. I'll kind of leave that out. Is talk to your neighbors. I think we get a lot of attention on the national side for all that's going on right now. But on the local end, we've got a lot more in common with our neighbor than we'll ever probably be willing to admit. So let's do some of that too.
Yep. Thank you. Casey.
Yeah, a lot of what Eric's saying, and you guys would have saw a bunch of the Be the Change people would have saw a video earlier this week from me, but unfortunately I'm in Facebook jail, so I'm silent.
Again.
But I will be doing an interview with a mayor of my city. Candidate, but he's going to win. Anyway, so I'm going to be doing a interview with him and a podcast with him. These are the questions I'm going to bring up. Like, hey, how do we help support and make change as being citizens and stuff like that? So you guys will see that probably next week is when I'll end up getting that done. And then we'll get that all taken care of. And no, Jamie, it's not on IG. It's on Facebook.
Yeah. We had fun with the IG the other day, but sorry that we couldn't get any stuff out, but I don't know when we're going to do the IG thing again. But anyways, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Cyree, to answer your question, I am a libertarian, but part of my libertarian leaning is that I understand that the community is going to be the greatest, is going to be the most important facet. So community is where your culture and your values is going to be established. So that's why I have my approach to local level is a little bit different. But I think this was a great combo, guys. I want to keep talking about local politics in the future too. Buckaroo, I know that you have a lot to say about it.
When does say?
We are going to become more and more involved with our local libertarian and Republican chapters. Saray, I call myself conservatarian because I have a lot of sympathies for many of the libertarian principles and the libertarian ideology. I think in many ways it is more consistent with itself than the conservative ideology. But I also do think, particularly in certain areas of economic protectionism and foreign policy, that the conservatives have a lot of strong points. And I believe I am a libertarian leaning conservative. As in, I'm a conservative who wants to pull the entire conservative movement towards the libertarian principles as much as possible. And I also do that I personally believe it would be easier to make effective, influential change in my community by engaging with the Republicans. And I'll say this again, like I said at the very beginning of this, when I went to the Libertarian Convention, I felt like I had to hide my Republican connections and friends. When I go to the Republican groups, I can just be like, I'm pretty libertarian, and they don't give me any grief over it at all. In fact, most of them are like, good
Cool.
for you. Good for following your wee little heart. You know.
Oh, you're so cute.
But
Yeah.
no, I do
wanna
consider
find out.
myself kind of straddling both, and I have sympathies in both camps. I am reaching out to Amani to see specifically what school she is tutoring for or what company she's tutoring for, and I'll get back to you on that. In the meantime, guys, thanks for watching. If you like conversations like this, it genuinely does help us out. If you go to the Liberty Revolt page, give us a like and a follow. And if you really want to be a star, go to the likes, click on the invite your friends button, and select a handful of people that you think might like this content. It is honestly the fastest and most effective way for us to grow. And I hate coming out here and begging and pleading for your support, but really support people who are working tirelessly. And I assure you, we are working tirelessly. And we try very hard not to be spammy. So consider giving us a like and a follow. It really does help. And I hope you guys have the most wonderful day. God bless.
Happy Labor Day.